Hello and welcome to Expert Marketing Matters. I'm Mark O'Brien, the CEO of Newfangled, and today I am joined by Olivia Angarosa, paid media strategist at Newfangled. Hey, Olivia.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Thanks for joining. And where are you joining from?
I am joining from Syracuse, New York.
That's wonderful. So, as some of you might know, we've gone to a distributed model where we have now team members all over the country, which has been thrilling and exciting and so good for the business in so many ways. It's one of the top topics I've been, obsessed with lately, just because of the impact it's had on Newfangled. But it's wonderful to be able to, have talent on the team like you, Olivia, without forcing you to move. Although you might move someday, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
But you don't need to move for the job. We've actually never met in person.
That is true. Yeah.
We will someday. We will someday. So what are we talking about today?
Yes. So today we are talking about how to drive the highest ROI for your paid media budget. And really the focus today is specifically for those that maybe are just getting started on paid media, that maybe don't have too much to spend, that might be more in the testing phase. So we're going to kind of talk about sort of how to develop that strategy, how to optimize it to allow for, the most cost effective layout and things of that nature. So that's really what we'll be diving into today.
Awesome. Wonderful. This is a topic. I was on a call yesterday with a prospect, and he had gotten advice from a consultant that part of his offering should include paid media. And what he said to me, this guy, Martin, really, really nice, smart guy, he's got a great firm, he's been doing this a long time. And what he said was, I just hate ads. It's just the underbelly of the internet. I have every ad blocker imaginable turned on. I'm sure you do too. And I just can't imagine, doing that for a living. It was like raw detest because he's thinking of what a lot of us think of with ads, right? Just like this noise, these interruptions, with Times Square brought to your browser, basically, is what he thinks of when he thinks of ads. Um, and what I said to him, I was like, I completely understand what you're talking about because that's exactly how I felt for a very long time. Newfangled's been around for 26 years, and for 20 of those years, we did not touch ads and didn't really believe in them. We believed in an organic only approach for all kinds of highly ethical reasons, right? But then as we saw that email was not what it used to be. We can't just buy a list and start sending to people and expect to get much out of that. And as content took longer and longer to gain the good graces of Google, we needed to do more to drive results. And so we began a journey a good number of years ago to try to figure out how much money our clients need to spend on ads and where. And it took us a long time to figure it out. And I would say in the past year and a half, we've more than hit the stride. We've had major breakthroughs, and you've been a very important part of that. Along with Jason, who created the department about a year and a half ago. And so, and I told Martin yesterday, I said, I understand where you're coming from, but my mind has completely shifted on this. And I just think it's 100% essential. And it's also 100% ethical, and it's affordable, which is what we're talking about today. I think another misconception agencies have is that they got to spend 50 grand a month like their clients do to start to see any results, and that's not the case. So anyway, that's kind of like the brief history of ads inside of Newfangled, and I'm so grateful to the work you and the whole team have been doing to create these amazing results for our clients. And that's what it's all about, right? Is actually driving business. So let's get into that. How do we use ads to effectively drive business with an agency budget, not an agency client budget?
Yeah. And I think this is exactly why everything you said, Mark, is exactly why we need to kind of talk about what we're talking about today, because sometimes paid media gets that bad rep, but if done well, you can actually, laser focus in on prospects that want to hear from you with messaging that's solving a problem they truly do have, and maybe don't know where to turn from that. I mean, there's so many times where you maybe see an ad in your personal life and you're like, I didn't even know I needed that, or oh my gosh, I said that out loud, and all of a sudden this ad is hitting me up on social media or whatever that looks like. So if done well, there's definitely a time and place for paid media. So yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, where do you even begin, right? So I think paid media is kind of like the wild, wild west. There's so much going on. You hear from so many different people. Everyone kind of does paid media differently. So as you go out to look at paid media, the first thing you really need to identify and what we'll consider the sort of 5-step approach to paid media is step one is, what is your goal, right? So I think a lot of people know that paid media works. They know it exists, but at the end of the day, when they go out to deploy paid media, if they don't identify what that goal is, then how are you going to be able to measure if it was successful at the end of the day, whether or not it's working or not working? So that's really what we are here to accomplish for our clients. So a multitude of goals. A goal might be, maybe it's just brand awareness. Maybe you have kind of switched your positioning statement. Maybe you are focusing on a different industry. So you want to go out there and let people know. Maybe it's very niche what you do. You want to go out there and just let people know, the masses, that you're there, that you exist, and just kind of make them aware of your product or service offering. Maybe the goal is growing that contact list. Like you said, Mark, you can't just buy these emails and start talking to these people. Maybe the goal is that you build this contact list for continued sort of relationship conversations and nurturing. As we talk about a lot here in Newfangled, it really is a funnel, right? We're talking to users at different stages within that funnel, and maybe you just want to get someone into that funnel that will nurture through email or nurture through a remarketing campaign. So maybe that's a goal. Or of course, ideally, why our clients come to us is for leads or closed business at the end of the day. How do we go out there and get them those sales? So first and foremost, before we do anything, before we decide where we're going to be, we need to make sure that goal is concrete, because we won't be able to measure the success at the end of the day without that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what's an example of a decent concrete goal that we might set for a paid media?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we might set would be maybe identifying our target audience and trying to target them on LinkedIn, for example. So we'll go out there with the goal of actually getting those contact form submissions. Maybe we're giving them an ebook or a white paper that we're asking them to download in exchange for their contact information. So our goal would be out there to capture those conversions. We could set that goal based on maybe historic performance in the past, or we might set that goal as we continue to learn, right? Every single client is so unique, and what works for one client may not work for another client, even if they're in the same industry. So really the goal is to go out there and get those contacts, but also learn sort of what our benchmarks are for us and for our paid media initiatives. What are we paying per each lead? How do we continue to drive that down over time? Which one of our target audiences, if we're testing a couple, is really converting for us, and sort of, learning as we go, and developing those benchmarks for ourselves.
Got it. And how does a client or how do we even know on behalf of a client where to invest that money? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google, like where do you start?
That is a wonderful question. So in one hand, you kind of have that goal, right? So you know what you want to accomplish. Like we talked about, it's leads, it's contacts. On the other hand, you need to think about who is accomplishing that goal at the end of the day, who's completing that goal. And you need to think about where they are, both physically in terms of the platforms that they hang out. Are they LinkedIn users? Are they Twitter users? Are they searching for your product or service on Google? And also where they are in the funnel. So you need to think about it. I always think of different platforms and the intent of the different platforms. If you have, say, a LinkedIn ad, me as the end user, I'm not going to LinkedIn to be served your ad, right? I'm going to, connect with a network. I'm going to talk to people. So I always think of that as more of a passive style of marketing. People aren't actively turning to that channel, but if they see your ad, then okay, maybe they're going to engage with that. But that might mean that they've never heard of you before. So the way that you talk to them and the way that you attack a LinkedIn campaign is going to be very different from the way that you attack a Google Ads campaign. I will say almost all clients in any realm of paid media is on search in some capacity, because people are actively going to a search network to search for something specific that they need. We know they're in market. Maybe they're searching for you by brand name. So you think of that a little bit differently than you would from a LinkedIn capacity. So thinking about that audience can help you inform, okay, this is where my audience is. I need to be there. And then the messaging comes along with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, One key point that you reminded me of a few minutes ago um, is in response to this, like ads being kind of annoying, like ads being problematic, right? At least. And it gets back to something we talk about all the time and have for so long, which is the number one thing that a firm, digital or creative agency, needs to wrap their heads around and really, truly, in their bones, believe is that their marketing isn't spam, right? They exist as a business because they provide a very valuable service. If they didn't, they wouldn't exist as a business anymore. The marketplace would not reward them, right? So they exist because they provide a great service. And all of marketing, I always say, marketing is about telling the truth, period. That's it. Great marketing is telling the truth. The more you tell the truth about the why your work is as good as it is, the details of the thought and the expertise that go into the great work, the more you tell the truth about the fine detail of that, which is hard to even wrap your head around sometimes when you're inside the bottle. Um, Referring to David's analogy, being inside the bottle, not being able to read the label. The more you tell the truth, the better your marketing is. And so that's all this is. Anything we talk about, email, content, ads, whatever, it's just about telling the truth and connecting with all the people out there who you can most help. And ads, like you say, are an incredibly effective way of doing that. What about the point that we hear, and I've got some thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours first. The point that we hear pretty often, but well, our audience, they don't look at ads, they don't click on ads.
Yeah, so that is a really good point, and I do get that from time to time. But I think I could answer that question a few different ways. I think at the end of the day, I think it depends on the piece of content that's in front of them. So if they're not engaging with that ad, then that means that ad isn't solving a problem for them. At the end of the day, especially in those initial phases, you are out there to provide as much value as humanly possible. We're not trying to, make a sale at the first handshake, right? We need to build that relationship over time. And at the end of the day, if you think of every piece of content in the eyes of the end user, all the end user cares about is what's in it for me. If that content piece provides as much value as humanly possible, then there will be nothing to argue with, because they need that content. They like what they see. And another thing too is it depends on how you look at that target audience. Are you looking at that by, say, job title, or is it people that you've engaged with in the past too? So some people might say, like, another thing, kind of flipping that on its head. Some people say, oh, my target audience isn't on Facebook, for example. My audiences don't use Facebook, like they're on LinkedIn, they're on Google. But what we can do is we can target, we can't target them based on a job title on Facebook, but we can place a pixel on your site and target anyone that's been there on Facebook. So maybe that's not, actively, again, it's more of a passive platform, but we know that we've talked to them before. We know where they are in the funnel. And again, we can kind of serve them a very, very unique message. And the same thing with an email list. We can upload your email list. So we're not talking to cold prospects that don't know you at all and maybe aren't going to engage with your ad. These are people that have been to the site. We know maybe what service that they've viewed, and we can follow up with them and say, hey, we don't have to be creepy and say, we saw you were looking at this and here's this, but we know sort of the problem they need solved, so we can kind of laser focus in with that message to retarget to that user. So again, I think it really, really comes down to the message and then whom you are considering that target audience to be as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I've loved so much as I've learned about paid media as we've developed the service inside of Newfangled is that, and you keep going back to this, the specificity. And you can just get in front of the exact right few people in the exact right area. And to your point, the exact right message. That is a value-based message. And yeah, if they don't care, then we got the message wrong or we got the audience wrong. But if we know the audience and we know what they care about, this goes back to positioning, right? It's all based on positioning. Then paid media is our best tool in our toolbox to just get right in front of the right people with a very specific message. And that message, we should say, is a content-based message. Like we're always linking back to a site, back to a content asset. Like, the ad is just a teaser to the actual thing we want them to get to, right? It's just an entry point, but it's a critical entry point. And one thing that's been incredibly interesting to me to see is that just the time to results for paid media um, because of this specific thing. And a very pointed example of time to results is what we see now, not always, but regularly. I'm not surprised by it anymore. Which we never, ever, ever, ever saw before. Again, 26 years. We're seeing it now. We never saw it before. Is people who click through an ad, go to the site, hit like 2, maybe 3 pages, then fill out the contact form, and they're a valid lead. That's insane. That's crazy. That is just completely crazy.
Oh, that's the power of paid, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And it actually happens. And I'm watching on our clients' accounts, like it actually happens. It doesn't happen all day, every day. It's not like, you just like spend some money and the coins just pour out of the slot machine. Like it's not that, but it's like undeniably quick results when we get the whole recipe right, which is so much of the work we do over the course of that first year of working with our clients.
Sure.
The recipe is still complicated, but the fact that a tool exists that can generate that kind of interaction at all is just incredible to me.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point there within all of that is they do click from the ad and then they get to the website, and that is an experience in and of itself. And I think it's all the system and the way that it works together, right? Sometimes we'll be running paid media ads and maybe they're not converting at that rate, right? They're not taking that action and that journey to take those few steps. That, it teaches us how to optimize and make things better, right? And I think that landing pages, a lot of people focus on the ad and the messaging, right? But you could have the best ad in the world, but if the landing page is not relevant to that ad, you're going to lose that user. And I think that that's why, here at Newfangled, we look at that whole, complete vision of what does that landing page look like? We do a lot of testing to see, okay, where is it that the user enters in? What journey is it that they want to take? And then we're very intentional about crafting that sort of user journey on the site as well. So you absolutely nailed it in thinking of it, it all works together, and you need to have the recipe, every piece of the ingredient in the right place, for it to come out the way you would like it to. So
yeah. And that's complicated, right? That's just really, really complicated. And it's custom for every firm, which is
100%.
A big part of the joy of this in the intrigue of it. Like it's what makes our work so exciting and fresh with every single client. It's, no 2 clients go about lead generation in the same way at all. Same functional tools, there will be paid media, there will be content, there will be a website, there will be email. Short of that.
Oh yeah. I have clients that come in and I'm like, you shouldn't even be on Google ads. You're very niche. The keywords people are buying, it's not converting for you. And they go on LinkedIn and they see amazing success on LinkedIn. They have really strong convertible content pieces, and they could be in the same industry. They could be in the complete same industry, right. But everyone is so unique. And I think it depends on, what they're kind of coming with already. What assets do they have currently? Who is their target audience? Have they been running paid or not? Is it all new to them? But yeah, absolutely. Everyone is completely unique. And that's the fun part, right? Yeah. It keeps it fun.
Right. Yeah, very, very fun. All right. So let's get to the cost-effective part.
Yes. Yes.
How do we work this magic on an agency budget?
Yes, it's a really great question. And I think that there's a few ways that we can kind of tackle this. And we'll look at maybe some of the sort of larger, all-encompassing things, and then some of the small, in-the-weeds, nitty and gritty things that you can do. From the beginning, the thing I always say is, as you're starting off, you're brand new, right? You don't want to, you're testing. You don't want to go out there, spend a ton of money when you don't really know what works yet, right? So you're really, really, really in that initial testing phase, and maybe you have a smaller budget to go out there and do that. Some ways that you might sort of narrow in that focus would be, think about the amount of channels that you're going after. If you have a really, really small budget, maybe just pick one. Don't try to go on Google Ads and on LinkedIn and slice and dice that budget. Choose the channel that you want to go after, because not only can you put your monetary resources, but the time and energy that it takes to manage and optimize one channel over the other. Just go all in on one. And maybe you need to think about, I think a lot of times clients come in and yes, they have a multitude of services that they want to promote. They want to go after all these and hit all of these target audiences. But you might just have to start and choose just one. Maybe we go with just one service to start, and say you do want to promote the services, you could rotate them. So say you wanted to start and run one service 1 month, see how that goes, maybe run it for a few months and then swap that out. So the full budget is supporting only one thing at a time. And then there's ways that you can do that as you start to look at promoting that service on, say, Google Ads or LinkedIn, for example. So if we wanted to get into the weeds on Google Ads, we could say some ways to really limit that budget is, again, focusing on that one service, but then also focusing on, some very, very specific low funnel keywords. A lot of times clients come in and there might be a long tail keyword, as they're called in the marketing world, which is more of like a longer phrase instead of just a one or two keyword. So if you look at those sort of long tail keywords, some clients, they want to go after, run a paid campaign, but people might be more in a research phase if they're searching for something like that. So I think taking some of those keywords that you might want to show for and instead making thought leadership pieces, using content and organic to back that. So that way, when it comes to paid media, all we're focusing on are these really, really low funnel convertible keywords. And then things like limiting what you're going after. For example, search, we talk about it a lot. You have to think when you go out on search, in a B2B space specifically, you are in a sea of B2C related searches as well. It doesn't matter how niche those keywords and relevant those keywords might be. You could still show for keywords that for people that want to do it themselves, or they want to learn how to develop an app instead of find someone to develop the app for them. So we have to do a lot of work in terms of adding in what we call negative keywords. So we have a set of keywords that we add to these search campaigns that from the jump, we're not showing for anything that's not related to that service. So we're kind of limiting the keywords we're going after, but making sure we're not showing for any B2C related searches. You could limit the locations we're going after. So some people want to target the entire United States. Maybe you pick pockets of where your target audiences might be. You could do day parting. You could say, all right, we have clients that say, no one's in the office. If someone's contacting me on the weekend, I don't even want to run ads on the weekend. Let's just turn off Saturdays and Sundays, or maybe we don't run after 5. So there's ways that you can kind of stretch that budget a little bit further in terms of the targeting that you're going after as well.
Okay.
And then another thing, is trying not to cover too much ground as well. We talk about users in the funnel, right? So you kind of have, your prospects, and then you have those, it's like the cold leads, the warm leads, the hot leads. If you have a really small budget, you might be better off just going after those hot leads. Do a remarketing campaign, load in your email list to LinkedIn, for example, and just target people that are really, really close to converting instead of trying to spend a ton of money to get more people in the funnel. If you have a little more money to spend, then absolutely, that's great to add into the mix, but that's certainly another way to sort of focus in 2 ways on budget, and then also the sort of quality of the user that you're talking to based on the understanding they already have of you and the knowledge they already have of you as well.
Yeah. As you're talking, I just keep thinking positioning. It's like specificity. It's specificity. And so the more specific you are, the more discrete the services that you offer to a more discrete audience, the more you know that audience, the faster the time to results, and the less money you ultimately have to spend to see those results.
100%.
Yeah. It's just so incredible to me. No matter what area of marketing we end up getting into inside of Newfangled, it all comes back to the positioning. No matter what, the better the positioning, the more effective. That's so interesting. Okay, so those are all a lot of really, really helpful ways to maximize a budget. And also you highlight something that is unique to paid media is the geographic bit, right? You could say, okay, my audience, or I really want to go after major metropolitans, or we have a client who's onboarding now. They have a service that is for municipalities, but this specific service is only for small municipalities. And so we can actually go pull up a list of zip codes of those municipalities with fewer than 300,000 residents in that zip code and target just people there. It's incredible. You can't do that with anything else. The specificity is just amazing. It's wonderful. And if you really know your audience, you can dial that. So what is a good budget, right? Now we know how to maximize the budget, but like what's a big budget? What's a tiny budget? What's what?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, it varies. I could give you sort of a base rate of what we kind of sit our clients at, but it very much can vary. So typically we start off around, 1,500 to 2,000 a month for our clients. And for some clients that does well. And then some clients, if it's very, a very heavily kind of trafficked industry, there's a lot of competition on these keywords, you might have to spend a little bit more. And that's what we can do too with these tools is, I go out there, I can do the research and say, hey, these are the keywords that I want to go after. This is how much, your competitors are paying on a cost per click basis. So if you want to be competitive, then you need to spend X. But with that $1,500 or $2,000, we can maximize that with all the things that we're talking about today, whether it's choosing a certain channel, or limiting the keywords we're going after, or adding in a ton of those negatives to make sure we're really, really narrowing in and honing in on that focus. But we really can, and we've seen it. I mean, we have seen it. The more budget, obviously, the more the merrier, the more eyeballs we can get in front of. But we've seen it work, right? Like you said, we see clients come in and get these leads at $1,500 or $2,000 a month. So I think it's just knowing where that audience is and knowing how to maximize those profits and being very, very intentional in sort of the messaging and targeting and the whole thing.
Great. That's super specific, and I think will probably be helpful to people listening. So thank you for that. Okay, so we should get to wrapping up. Before we fully wrap up, what are some best practice takeaways that people should keep in mind as they walk away from this?
Yeah, I think obviously, as we talked about initially, is know that goal, right? So before you do absolutely anything on paid media, be very, very intentional of how you're measuring success at the end of the day. If you have that limited budget, maybe you go after, one or two tactics. One thing that I like to say as well is, we talked about that retargeting approach. Maybe if you don't have a ton of budget and you want to just go after that retargeting audience, there are, cost-effective ways to drive traffic to your site outside of, the search or the LinkedIn sort of realm. For example, like a Google display ad or a native ad. Some of these can help drive a ton of traffic to the site. They may not convert immediately, but now you have more sort of people in the funnel to then retarget, do more segmented retargeting, and all that entails. And you might even look at, Microsoft ads too, for example. That's something a lot of people think just Google, right? But a lot of times, in the medical industry, maybe these users aren't allowed to have Google on their computer. They need to use the default of Microsoft or Bing. And Microsoft also has a relationship with LinkedIn. So you can target the LinkedIn users on Microsoft for, lower cost too. So I think it's knowing what platform to be on, narrowing in that target audience. And then we talked, I think, quickly on it today, but that landing page experience as well. I think making sure you have as specific a landing page as possible, whether it be for someone to come in through LinkedIn and download an asset, someone to come in from Google Ads, and you want them to convert immediately with a contact form right on that page. Crafting a specific landing page could make a world of difference. You might see amazing click-through rates on your ads, but then you start digging in a little bit and you realize, oh, wow, the user is really confused about what my ad is and what my landing page is. So making sure that landing page is as cohesive to the message as possible. And then, of course, knowing when to scale up and scale down, right? We do testing for a certain time, but, as the momentum starts to roll, the last thing you want to do is turn the faucet off. So know when you need to add in more budget as well when something is working, and kind of go after where that highest ROI is coming from, and not being afraid to, add some fuel to the fire when you start to see success as measured by the initial goals that you set.
Wonderful. That's so great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So this might not be out by then, but hopefully it will be actually. We've got a Mirren webinar that we're doing with the folks at Mirren, which we're really excited about. We have a series, and this will be the last part of the series. This meaning a conversation between the two of us about paid media, and we'll be able to get into a lot more detail on that. So you can sign up for that through mirren.com, mirren.com, and I believe that one is July 16th. but you'll be able to see that in the exact date on Mirren.com. So Olivia, thanks so much. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for everything you did at Newfangled. It's a pleasure to work with you. And, this was really, really interesting, and it feels like we could talk for another 6 hours if we need to. Maybe we'll have to do a part. We'll have to do a part 2, or bring some other of your team members in. Bring Jason, Mike, and Hannah in at some other time. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, you have a good day.
You too. Thanks, Mark.